An HTML element usually consists of a start tag and an end tag, with contents inserted in between, like this. You have the opening tag, the tag name, then you close it, you have the content that is inserted here, and finally you have the closing tag. In the previous video, we learned how to add paragraphs to our website. So we used the opening tag, then the tag name for this paragraph, which is the P element. That's why we have this. And then the closing tag, which is here, then the name tag. And you have the content for your paragraphs that goes here. The same thing for the H1, which we used to add headings. You have the opening tag, the tag name, which is H1, then you have the contents for your heading, and finally you have the closing tag. There are some HTML elements with no contents. These elements are called empty elements, and they do not have an end tag like the BR element, which is used to add a line break. So let's see how it works. Here, let's create a paragraph. Let's add a random text. Now, if you want to have a line break here, you have to add the BR element. So let's do it. And now we have a line break. Let's add another line break here. Great. If you notice here, the BR element is nested within the P element. And with HTML elements can be nested. For example, if you want to group all of these elements in one container, you can add a div element and use it as a container. So these elements are nested. Or maybe if you want to add a link to this paragraph, you can nest the link element here, which is the A element, and everything will be fine. Don't worry if you find it a little bit confusing. By the end of this course, everything will be clear. There is also another thing that you need to be aware of. You have to nest the tags correctly. So here, let's suppose that you have two paragraphs. So let's create the first one, and then let's create the second one. If you want to group these two paragraphs, you can use the div element, but you have to use the tags correctly. So if you do something like this is incorrect. Or if you forget to add the end tag, well, this is incorrect. So when nesting HTML elements, please make sure that you use the correct nesting and follow the right order of HTML elements. And also here, when we use HTML elements, we use lowercase tags. HTML tags are not case sensitive. This means that the P element with a uppercase letter means the same thing as the P element with a lowercase letter. But it is recommended that you always use lowercase in HTML. There is also something important that you need to know, and I believe that you will be frequently using it. I'm talking about HTML attributes. HTML attributes provide additional information about HTML elements. Let's see how we can add an attribute to an HTML element. So you need to know that all HTML elements can have attributes. And to add an attribute, you always specify it in the start tag. An attribute follows this pattern. The attribute name equals, and you have the value. For example, you can add a style attribute to this paragraph and change its color. To do this, you go to the opening tag, you type in the attribute name, in our case it is the style attribute, then you type in equal, and here you type in the value. So I will be using something that we will discuss later on when we learn CSS. You can also give it an ID attribute. This attribute will allow you to identify this element with JavaScript or CSS. Later on, we will learn everything about these attributes. And this was to demonstrate that HTML elements can have attributes. So let's recap. An HTML element usually consists of a start tag and an end tag, with content inserted in between. There are some HTML elements with no content. These elements are called empty elements, and they do not have an end tag, like the BR element, which is used to add a line break. HTML elements can be nested, And finally, HTML element can have attributes.